Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty Trade Show. And today we've got Matt English in the house ready to analyze some of our deals over the last 2 weeks. It is trade season and teams are deciding which way to go, whether to contend, whether to look forward to the 2025 year, or just make some maneuvers because, hey, it's fun, right? So let's get into some of these deals, Matt. We are going to fire it off right away with our deal we did in the Birdhouse. And let me bring it up right here on the screen. Not the best view for you guys, but hopefully you can see here. All right, over here on the right, we've got myself collecting. Now, we did this trade last week right after Russ was announced the starter, basically. And you threw Russ and David Njoku up on the block. I was targeting Kenny Walker off of your roster. And so I figured that, I figured I'd be able to sneak Russ and Njoku in on the deal too, because I'm contending and they can't hurt in best ball. This is a 12 by 12 team, start 12 best ball. So you need plenty of bodies. And I just wanted to get some zeros off my roster on the very bottom of it. So from your end, Matt, why don't you give your perspective on this deal?
Yeah, sure. So this is a league. I co-manage this team with another buddy of mine. And we approached this draft kind of just attacking where no one else was attacking and trying to soak value. Now, some of that is going to come with a price, right? Like sacrificing a season, perhaps, by soaking value of young talent, which we did that. But we went heavy on the running backs. And because of injuries, we're just not competing this year. We're just not. And so going into this trade, I put some guys on the block. And you encompass two of them in the deal. And I know we went back and forth here. But the way I look at this from my end, I am dealing off three pieces that can score, especially, Russell Wilson is now starting for the Steelers. Kenneth Walker has been doing Kenneth Walker things. He's a damn good running back, and people discount him all the time because they drafted Zach Charbonnet. And to date, Kenneth Walker is still the starting running back. He's a good guy. He's a good player to have on your fantasy squad. So to have all three of those guys who all did well last week, but I get to bring in young talent like Jalen McMillan. I get Rashid Shaheed at kind of a discount here because I'm also adding a 26 first, a 26 second. And I love some draft capital there and what's coming here in a couple of years. To replace what I've dealt off, right? So I get draft capital, I get some young talent. The one question mark from what I receive here, I mean, obviously with the injury news here in Tampa Bay, Jalen McMillan is an instant winner for me.
The one guy I did not want to give up in the deal is McMillan, and I knew you'd want him, and look what happens.
That's what happened. But you get three guys that all chipped in great numbers this week and probably going to do so for the rest of the year. Assuming everyone stays healthy and produces at the level that they did last week. But Trey Lance is my one question mark here from a player grab standpoint. But we'll see how that works itself out. I'm happy with Jalen McMillan and Rashid Shaheed and the first and second here for the pieces that I gave up. Trey Lance is just kind of, you can call him cake decoration. We'll see what happens with him. I think there's going to be teams always need quarterbacks. Every year, teams need quarterbacks. And everything that we're watching transpire in Dallas, maybe Trey gets some snaps this year. Maybe he's playing for another team next year. So we'll see what happens with that. But I love this deal. It makes sense for both of us. You're contending. You need some point getters. I'm clearly trying to improve my draft position, being I was in last place. Now I'm in second to last place. But either which way, trying to improve our draft position so that we can stock up on some more younger players. this was a deal that just totally made sense at this point in the season. Didn't work out for us early, making moves to make sure it works out for us in the offseason. And, maybe we're in a little bit better position next year.
Yeah, you mentioned the cake decoration in Trey Lance, but one thing you can do if you're rebuilding in a dynasty best ball is to collect some of those backup quarterbacks, because let's face it, as soon as the starter goes down, those backups present value, especially in best ball, because you can roster 4 or 5, 6 starting quarterbacks on your roster, and that's a good thing going into each week because of the fluctuation in points that these starting quarterbacks have been scoring, especially this year. You have a lot of good quarterbacks having down weeks, like single-digit scoring weeks, and then you get guys like Andy Dalton who come in and pop off for 30, and then Russ Wilson last week pops off for 30 out of nowhere. So just having a starting quarterback can get you more than 0.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, in our 53-man league, right, our full NFL roster that we start, we drafted Joe Flacco, Drake May. We drafted a bunch of backup quarterbacks. I didn't draft a ton of starters, but I drafted backups. Joe Flacco gave me 2 quality weeks and actually looks like the best quarterback in Indianapolis. But I also drafted Drake May, who's now playing. I drafted like 3 or 4 backup quarterbacks that have plugged in long enough for me to keep going, and we're right there in the playoff hunt in that league. And that was a league I sacrificed draft picks in the startup. Just to, I was going to give up this year and hope for next year, but we're in the playoff mix because of some of those backup quarterback picks that we took that have carried us further. So yeah, in dynasty format, you better have some backup quarterbacks, especially if your bench allows it. Oh man, there's no better way to stack draft capital and sneak out wins than when you have those backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, one of my rebuilding teams, and we'll have a trade from that league. I have, I think 8 backup quarterbacks on my roster right now. I just was able to unload Jameis Winston for a 4th. I didn't care. I just put him out there and wanted a 4th. Anytime they get their possible opportunity, put them out there for a 4th rounder. It's just a free pick. I don't care what year. It just goes into the bank. And so.
And what do we do? What do we do when we have like 2, 3, 4 4th round picks?
You try and package them up and get a 3rd.
There you go. And if you got a couple of 3rds, you try package those for seconds.
Yes, and you move them on up. So
they all count. They all count.
You don't have to make the picks. That's right. The key to keep in mind. Yes. So I am a little spurned by giving up Jalen McMillan here, but you know what? I'll ride Kenneth Walker to the title this year, hopefully. And I just looked at his rest of season outlook and the way Seattle's offense is moving. You can't deny that they're putting points up on the board. Their offense is just running well, and it's on the back of Kenneth Walker. I mean, yes, Geno is throwing it a lot, but Walker has shown that he can catch the ball now. Those reports that he couldn't catch out of college, that is way in the rearview mirror now. So yes, Charbonnet is a solid backup now. He's basically a handcuff. That's really all he is. I know that coming into the season, it was looked at as more of like a 55-45 type split, but at this point, it's clearly Kenneth Walker, 70-30 split. He is getting the action. So continue to go out there and try and get Kenneth Walker if you're contending. I'm feeling confident with him. He did nothing to bring me off of that thought process going forward from his performance last week. And as far as Njoku goes, well, he took advantage of DTR coming into the game last week. He ended up with 10 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. So Njoku blew up. Don't know what it will look like for the rest of the year, but Watson is out now. And so DTR and Winston will get to fight over who's throwing the ball there in Cleveland. And hopefully Njoku continues to get some good looks. They haven't been playing that well, the Browns, and so they look to be trailing in a lot of games, and hopefully that benefits Njoku. From Matt's side, I wanted to get rid of Rashid Shaheed because, again, I was contending, and now he was going to get me 0 points. And much like I discussed last night on my show with Chris Godwin and Brandon Ayuk, if you're a contender and you're stuck with those guys, don't get stuck holding the bag, right? They're going to get you 0 points on your IR. They're still fresh in people's minds, both of them. It's not a month after their injury. It's just a week after their injury. So people still have them fresh in their minds, and that's the time to trade them. So I know you'll get a little less than what you would have gotten for them last week right now, but you can still get something for them. I was able to, I'll show you my other trade that I just did in, what league was it here? Let me find it first. Matt, if you want to chime in on the deal a little bit more, go ahead.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say is with Njoku too, Amari Cooper's gone. Deshaun Watson's not throwing the ball anymore. And we know when Deshaun's not the quarterback, Njoku tends to put up some big numbers. Now that there's no Amari Cooper and no standout wide receiver, Njoku looks like he's going to be a top 10 tight end rest of season from my standpoint. I would be totally comfortable rostering Njoku as my only tight end the rest of the way. So I think that's a great grab along with the Kenny Walker grab. I'm still tickled pink with my part of the grab. I get a first and a second, and I got Jalen McMillan. I'm super stoked about that. And then Rashid Shaheed. So I'll say this because I stick by everything I said about the Saints fantasy players in week 2. Sell high on all of them. I do. However, in my position, being in last place, getting Rashid Shaheed, knowing that he's going to be out, I collected 0, improving my draft stock. Blah, blah, blah. But in best ball, that guy's a killer. Guy's a killer. I don't want to depend on him in, a roster league. But in best ball, oh, my goodness. That dude can put up 30, 40 points in a random week. He put up 5, but he could also put up like 30 or 40 as well. So I would only be interested in that type of a deal if I was in the best ball position like we were in this one. However, we were. So I'm happy about Rashid Shaheed and Jalen McMillan. I get young pieces and I get draft picks. It's a win for me, and you're contending, so it's a win for you. It's actually one of the more balanced and win-win trades I've been a part of. Most of the trades I can talk about and sell them as win-wins, but let's be honest. There's a winner and a loser in most deals. I feel like in this one, maybe you edge out because you get you get a better shot at winning the title this year. But you could argue the same for me in that over the next 2-3 years, I might be in better position as well.
Correct. And so going off of the Shaheed sentiment there, here's the other trade I was talking about right here. And this was actually in the same league. So I also had Chris Godwin. And after the injury Monday night, I obviously knew he was going to be out the rest of the season and therefore get me 0. And since I'm contending, I figured I had to go out and try and replace his points in my lineup. Now, Godwin was putting up top 5 numbers, so that wasn't going to be easy. I mean, other than going after one of the elite types, it was going to be hard to do. So I figured better off looking at the bottom teams in the league and in our league. as you know, there was one guy, I think it's Scoopadopoulos has got T. Higgins, and that night he was frustrated and threw him, basically said his whole team was on the block. Was that Scoop or was that a different guy? I can't remember now.
I feel like it is, but I
Okay.
can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah.
Anyway, somebody, he had T. Higgins, so I went and offered him Godwin and a first for, no, I offered him Godwin. Shoot, I can't remember. I tried to package something for T. Higgins,
Right.
but he didn't want to do that because I could feel he didn't really want Godwin, which is understandable. Like when you're doing these deals and you're trying to offer Godwin or Ayuk to somebody, if they're not interested in them, well, you know what? Then just try and go a different route because the guy is injured and they're not going to score any more points this year. And who knows how long into next season either. Godwin's type of injury, it was an ankle. So I think that he will be ready for the beginning of next season. I mean, the Bucs are even saying that if they make a playoff run, he could be back. I doubt that.
He will not be back in a Bucs uniform next year.
Probably not. Because, of course, your guy, Jalen McMillan, is just going to blow up, right? And they won't need him.
Well, no. It gets into a numbers game of finances. They just re-signed Mike Evans. They just re-signed Baker Mayfield. They're out of money. How are you going to be able to pay Chris Godwin the number that he's going to demand and deserve?
Now he'll get less.
I just don't see it happening. I could see other teams coming over the top of what he's worth and him signing with them because ultimately this is a business for these guys. They have the freedom to move. I could just see him going to a team like, as weird as this is going to sound, as painful as it might be for you, he could end up in New Orleans.
Yeah, well, New Orleans is $70 million under the cap, over the cap. So they have to, just like we would have to do in
that's right.
Messing with
but
the
what
numbers.
Happens when they deal Alvin Kamara?
Yeah.
They just re-signed him. So they got the extension. And if they go ahead and trade him, think about the dead cap. I mean,
how exactly did he sign this contract? I just want to know. How did he sign this contract with a broken hand?
When the news broke on Kamara's deal, like as soon as it broke,
I think it was like that.
Here was trade time. Yeah. Kamara doesn't want to be there with Dennis Allen. And I guarantee you New Orleans doesn't want to harbor an aging running back who's been inefficient over the last 3 years. They're only paying him because they want to trade him, and it gives them a cap advantage. That's it. Why would you re-sign a running back to a 2-year extension at $12 million a year when he's been one of the least efficient running backs over the last 3? Come on. They're trading him.
I don't know. They want to run the offense through him. That's all I could think about. I don't know.
Hand,
it'll be a very interesting offseason for the Saints. We'll say that because whether Derek Carr comes back next year, I doubt that. They've got Olave and Shaheed will be there, but the rest of the offense is kind of up in the air, and a lot of it will depend on how well Spencer Rattler performs the rest of the season, and how much time he gets too. I know he's probably going to get to play this week, but after that, who knows? So,
floating hand has something to say.
Yes.
See my floating hand?
Yes.
Floats.
It is floating.
Yeah. Kamara will not be a Saint by the end of the year. Okay. Godwin will not be a Buccaneer come next year. I'm just
all right.
Just telling. I got a feeling he'll be in New Orleans. I could be wrong about that part, but I don't think Godwin will be a Buck next year.
Well, if we don't trade for Kupp, I can see us bringing him back. We'll put it that way. But that said, I would have no problem with us giving up a second rounder, which is apparently the going asking price for Kupp. I'd have no problem with Jason Lick giving up the second rounder. I think the problem, I think the problem Jason Licht has with it is the amount of cap space that Cooper Kupp demands, which is at least as much as Evans. So to take that on is a tricky thing. Now the Rams they've said that they would take on some of his money, but what is that? That's fine for this year. But what does that mean going forward for 25 and 26? Because Kupp has no out in his contract until I think it's 27. So like he's guaranteed money for a couple more years yet, and he's already 31, I think. So he'll be 32 and 33 then. That's really pushing it, and we don't like to run things that way unless we're getting an old guy for cheap, So I think Tampa would look another route, somewhat maybe like the Chiefs did, where they got DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know exactly how much Hopkins' contract is at now at this stage in his career. But the Chiefs were able to pull something off. So if we really want to win this year, then we gotta go out and do something. 31.
Kupp is 31. So
he's 31. Okay. Yeah.
So from a dynasty perspective, no matter where he gets traded, it's an aging asset. But yeah, I get what you're saying. For the Bucks to be able to plug the hole, that's a lot of cap to take on for a 31-year-old receiver.
Yes. All right, so let's discuss this follow-up trade I ended up doing. So I gave up Chris Godwin and a first, my 26 first.
Which I'm okay with. You get Devonta Smith, which is a good piece. And then you get your choice of Trey Palmer or Sterling Shepard to see who's going to help you this year. I'd venture to say it's probably going to be more Trey Palmer. But
I didn't know which one. I don't know between Shepard, Palmer, or McMillan which one is going to end up, as the best wide receiver now in this situation in Tampa. As we discussed a little while ago, right before the show, it's probably going to be the running backs who take on the bulk of the load. I would suspect, like this week we play Atlanta, that we're going to try and shorten the game, try and run the ball. Hopefully it works. Hopefully the defense can prevent Kirk Cousins from throwing for 500 yards again. I mean, we've gone back-to-back weeks now defensively where we've given up five touchdowns in one game and 500 yards in another game. So this one was just another good example of how to unload an injured receiver that you have if you're contending. All right, we're going to
that's correct. Yeah.
Get those potential points off. All right, we're going to head over to our bottom line league here, where you, Matt, did a deal with Anthony. I got to find it here. Let's see. Where is that deal?
It was a great deal.
This was a big one.
Yeah, it was a big one. Yeah, it sure was. We got rid of a lot of point getters for me. This was a year that was supposed to just be a kind of a rebuilding year. Let's keep low on the points, improve our draft stock, get rid of some veterans that could be getting points for picks. And a couple of weeks ago, I go and have the second or third highest scoring week. I still lost to the number one team in the league. But I had to get rid of some pieces that I've been trying to get rid of. And I had Evan Ingram, Ramondre Stevenson, Terry McLaurin on the block. I had some dudes on the block. And anyway, I got kind of sucked into one of my best trade partners in the league with Break Yourself for Tony. And we ended up swapping some players again. Guys that both of us have owned came back to us. I traded off Evan Ingram, Trevor Lawrence, Ramondre Stevens, and Chase Brown. And in return, I got Justin Herbert, Quentin Johnson, Audric Estime, a 2025 third, and what else did I get?
27
second. Yep. So I get a couple of picks, and I unload some point getters from my team, and then I get some young talent. And the cool part is I can still flip Justin Herbert. down the road. He's still a name. And, even without a touchdown, the dude can still put up 18 points.
Yeah, when we're looking at this deal from my perspective on the outside, I'll play the cross-off game here. You can kind of cross off Lawrence and Herbert, and then you've got I would say QJ and Estime probably cross off Chase Brown, and then you've got a second and third going the other way for Ingram and Chase Brown for the second and third then. So I guess it kind of depends on what you feel about Quentin Johnston, because you could just cross off the stacks in this one if you'd like. Quentin Johnston's plenty young enough versus Evan Ingram. But Ingram is a tight end, so we don't know how long he'll play.
Let's look at how the Chargers offense has looked. As much as I downplayed QJ, and I don't necessarily believe in him, look at the Chargers offense over the last 2 weeks and how touchdown anemic they are without Quentin Johnston in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a playmaker, and Harbaugh has given him his opportunity. He didn't show up last year, but they had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams there. And so when those guys got hurt and Quentin Johnston didn't show up, that put a bad taste in everybody's mouth. So he's somebody that, you could ask half the people in your league and they wouldn't even want to touch him. Right.
Yep.
But sometimes that means that's a good time to go get a guy. I remember 3 years ago, nobody wanted Deebo Samuel because he was nothing but an injury machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he blew up and had that season where he finished wide receiver 2 behind Cooper Kupp because the Niners had no running game and they had to hand him the ball. And it was just a wild season for Deebo. And we're kind of seeing that again this year with Deebo and all of his injuries. But, man, when the guy is in the lineup, he is electric. He scores points. And Quentin Johnston, I'm not saying he's on the level of Deebo Samuel, but Quentin Johnston has been performing this year when he's been in the lineups. And that's, sometimes you have to take a chance here or there. And to me, Ramondre Stevenson is kind of just meh. Like the offense in New England looks better.
He may not even play this week.
Yeah, the offense looks better, right? With Drake May at the helm. I just don't know that Stevenson fits into that system, the future for New England and their offense. Like with Drake May in there, JaMychal Hasty has been tearing it up. I think Antonio Gibson fits into that type of offense better. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure Stevenson will have a few good games here towards the end of the season, maybe a touchdown or here and there, but 100-yard games, I don't see them coming from Stevenson. That 3-down bell cow role, I don't see being there. Like, there's no reason JaMychal Hasty would be on the field that much if they thought Stevenson was a real receiver, was a real bell cow.
I will say that one specifically because knowing the staff that's in place in New England and what they want to do, Ramondre is actually absolutely a guy that, look, they've got what they think is a prototypical pocket passer who can sling the ball all over the place, right? The junior Brady, okay? And you need to have a good run game to support that. Ramondre's dealt with a bunch of injuries, and that hurts him a lot. So they're taking advantage of the personnel that's healthy. I don't think Antonio Gibson's the answer. JaMychal Hasty's not the answer. But I also don't believe that Ramondre Stevenson's the answer. Not in this system, not with what they're actually trying to do. He's a damn good running back. But for this year, with this team, I don't think he's the fit. And so I'm trying to move Ramondre wherever I got him. So if you're still holding him and no one's taking a bite, as soon as he has a big game, you got to unload the dude.
Yeah, just wait a week or two. The New England offense has been looking good. I don't know how they'll do against the Jets. Jets are a better defense than what they've faced in Drake May's 2 first games so far. But, he's been quietly very efficient in those 2 starts. They've been trailing. He hasn't thrown any picks yet. But we'll see. They get the Jets this week. They're a legitimate defense. So, yeah, at least the offense has woken up in New England. We'll just say that. We'll leave it there. They're going to go out and get more assets for him in the future going forward. And I think the sky is bright, very bright for New England there. All right, I am going to bring up one more deal here because this one was pretty wild from my perspective. And it's another one that I did, but I got to go dig it up here. Let me see. No, not that one. Oh, let's see here. This one involves me just unloading a ton of draft capital that I had accumulated over time. And I went into this season as a middle of the road team, but one that had some possibilities. But all right, here we go. I started off hot in this league, and so I was on top of the standings, and I was the top points team as well. I think I was 10-2 at the time, or 9-3. I was 9-3. Somebody else was 9-3, but I had the most points as well. All right, okay. So I had 320. I had 325 first.
When did you do this deal?
I had 325 first and a 26 first still, and the guy that was on the very bottom announced that he was going to start trading. And so I looked at his team and I was like, I want these 2 guys for my title run, because I had plenty of depth on this team, but it was a team where I had issues picking who to start on a week-to-week basis. It was tough, right? So now, on one hand, you could say, well, now didn't you make it tougher on yourself by adding Drake London and Jahmyr Gibbs?
Draft capital. You gave him tons of draft capital to bring in these guys. I mean, whoo, four first-round picks, 3 next year. That's a lot, dude. That's a lot. Now, I love Drake London, and I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. Stafford's a Band-Aid for you this year. But, I mean, I guess it's going to get down to what do you feel the value of London and Gibbs are long-term, right? Because Stafford and O'Connell are moot points here. Those are just decorative pieces.
Let me bring up my team here so we can kind of review it. Stafford isn't exactly just a mute point on my team because my quarterback situation was Jalen Hurts. Now I have Stafford, but I had Daniel Jones and Deshaun Watson.
And Jameis Winston, looks like.
And now I had Jameis Winston. So, and I have DTR on this team as well. All right. So my point is that I was running Jalen Hurts and either Daniel Jones or Deshaun Watson out there every week at quarterback on a team where I had Breece Hall, Achane, and David Montgomery at running back already. But I added Jahmyr Gibbs.
Or no? No, it's not.
This is not a best ball.
Yeah.
No, I would love it.
My tabs.
I wish this was a best ball.
Makes it a lot easier.
But Drake London immediately became my wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Okay. On a team where I had Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I get it.
I had Zay Flowers, Hopkins, Jacoby Myers. So you can see, okay, guys, Mike Evans.
There's always the context of the trade, right? Yeah, it makes more sense now.
Yes. So you can see
You're
Drake London gives me that surefire top end wide receiver, at least from what I had seen from him that previous week. And this was right before the 500-yard game from Cousins. So I got the benefit from that. And now Jahmyr Gibbs had a blow-up game last week, finally. And it's not that he wasn't doing great, but you know what I'm saying? Gibbs finally showed his full potential this last week.
You and I discussed a trade I had offered to me, Montgomery for A.J. Brown, which I thought was absolutely asinine the moment it came across my screen.
Sure.
But it's, Montgomery always starts off the year great. Always starts off great, but with a two-back system, the older back usually fades at the end of the year. So why give up a stud receiver for a running back that's going to fade? So, bringing in Jahmyr Gibbs gives you a little bit of security in the Detroit backfield. Yeah, you're starting them both here. But as you scroll down, you see A-Chain and some other running backs that get to fill in for you later. Stafford gives you the super flex piece there. I mean, you gave up probably more than I'd have been comfortable giving up, but you now completed your team to actually make the run.
Yeah, I figured
because Atlanta can only go up from here. I don't expect Cousins to be hanging out at like an average of. I mean, if you take week 5 out of Kirk Cousins' fantasy production, Atlanta's production altogether, it's pretty mediocre. I don't expect that to just hold all year. Kirk Cousins doesn't put up mediocre numbers all year. Maybe he puts it up for 33% of the games, but the other percentage, he's throwing that football a lot. So there's only an increase there, in my opinion, for Drake London. So I actually, now that I kind of look at your roster, regardless of the others, knowing you're contending, the fact that you're contending with that roster pre-trade is pretty amazing. And I think this actually puts you in position, actually, be more dangerous.
Yeah, if we look at the league standings here, I am sitting at 9-5 now. Yeah, I had the standings mixed up. I had the standings mixed up with this league and another league. Yeah, I was sitting at I think I was 6-4 when I made this deal, and so gone 3-1 since, and so I feel a lot better going forward. The reason that I was willing, I know I gave up a lot of draft capital, but the fact is that Drake London and Jahmyr Gibbs are both young, right?
Yep.
Both young guys, so I don't mind missing out on whatever I would have gotten with those three firsts next season. By the way, 2 of them were late. I mean, one was the guy who's in first, and so I didn't mind doing it. All right. So that's all we've got for the trade show today. Be sure to throw your trades at me. You can throw them at buymeacoffee.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. You could put them on our Patreon, patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. We will be back with more trades later on, and we will help you out however we can. Just drop us a line, and remember, never stop working.
Never stop working. And I'm going to add this towards the end here, Chris. If you're scared to trade, don't be. It's the only way you get better. It's the only way you get better. You have to trade. I don't care if it's redraft or dynasty or it does not matter. If you have a roster and pieces you can trade, you need to be looking to better your roster at all times, even if you're 7-0.
Absolutely, because the Chiefs are 6-0 and they're a fraud. So,
well, the first 4 games were given to them by the Zebras. So, yeah, they're 3-0 in my book, and that's it.
They're not winning it this year. Don't worry, Matt. They're not winning it.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right, man. Thanks for joining today. We had a great time.
Yes, it has been. Always glad to be a part of it. See you soon.
Have a good one.